This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
We are all part of one mind, a great energy gestalt, and we are connected at the level of the collective unconsciousness. Each individual aspect of the gestalt has its own electrical system, its own vibration rate, and interacts with all other aspects. Thus, we are all connected to one another and to a central point. On a higher self or psychic level, it is possible for anyone to tune in to anyone else and to draw upon the entire gestalt. Humankind takes advancing steps when group consciousness reaches critical mass and new awareness is accepted by the whole. Everything begins as a thought or idea. Ideas and experiences create beliefs that in turn create your reality. If you are unhappy with your current reality, you must change your beliefs and your behavior. Beliefs can be changed when you recognize which ones are not working for you. Change that belief and your life will change. With respect to changing your behavior, you must decide the disharmonious behavior you need to eliminate. Then, realize you don't have to change how you feel about it. You simply have to change what you are doing. Buddha knew what he was talking about when he said, "Your resistance to what is causing your suffering." I do not think Earth is our home. After 40 years of study and having researched and written more than a dozen books on related subjects, it is clear to me spirit is our true home. And we each are here on Earth on a journey that had a beginning and will have an end. Regardless of your religious beliefs or lack thereof, you came from spirit, and you will return to spirit, says Stephen Hawley Martin. In this episode, Valeria Tellis interviews Stephen. Best-selling author Stephen Hawley Martin has had more than half a dozen titles achieve bestseller status on Amazon.com and is the only 3-time winner of the Writer's Digest Book Award, having won first prize twice for fiction and once for nonfiction. He has also won a first prize for visionary fiction from Independent Publisher and a first prize for nonfiction from USA Book News. In all, he has written 17 books under his own name and has ghostwritten a half a dozen more, including a memoir for a $2.5 billion in sales tech company CEO, a best-selling business management title for another tech company CEO, and 2 titles for consultants in the Six Sigma and lean production arena. For 2 years, he hosted a successful weekly internet talk radio show, The Truth About Life, which averaged 30,000 listener downloads per episode. A former advertising agency president and CEO, he is currently editor and publisher of the Oakley Press. Click here to visit the Oakley Press website, where you can learn how Stephen can help bring your book or your book idea to market. Here is the interview with Stephen Hawley Martin.
In your own words, who is Stephen Hawley Martin?
Oh, gosh. Well, Stephen Hawley Martin is a writer. I'm also a ghostwriter. I would say, more importantly, a spiritual being who is having a physical experience right now and here on planet Earth. I believe that we are all immortal, that we're all eternal beings, and that we come into this reality often, many times, to experience and to sometimes to learn certain things, and sometimes we each have a mission to accomplish while we're here. And I feel like I have a mission, and one of those that mission is to tell people, let people know, and to convince them through logic and through science that they are indeed spiritual beings having a physical experience, and that they all have reasons that they're here, and they need to find out what those reasons are and try to pursue them. So that's who I am.
Yeah, it sounds really good. Thank you. I have a few warm-up questions before we talk about your book, Your Path to Bliss, How to Find and Pursue Your Purpose. Speaking of purpose, right? Your mission and lessons. So my first warm-up question is, what is life?
Oh, well, life is consciousness, and life is being aware that you are alive, that you are you, that you, I think it was Descartes that said, I think, therefore I am. And that is life. And I believe that all creation, all physical creation is alive. Trees are alive, animals are alive. They all have that consciousness. And in fact, consciousness is life, life is consciousness, and consciousness permeates physical reality. I think it's the basis upon which physical reality was created. Is life. It's a force, a life force. It's a force that pushes toward growth, harmony, evolution. It's something we all share.
Yeah. Do you think that consciousness, awareness, and the mind itself, they're all one, all the same thing, or somewhat different?
Well, I think they are all aspects of the same thing. I think that there is one mind, that we are all one, that we think we're different or separate from the one mind, but that really, as they say in the East, that's Maya. That's an illusion. That we have, thinking that we're separate, because we have a body, we have our own mind, our own thoughts, our own memories, and so we feel we're separate, but we are all part of the one mind. And there are instances when you have a kind of mystical experience, which I have had. You feel at one with the whole, and you kind of instantly know that you are. But it's something that's very hard to describe to other people who haven't had that experience.
That's true. Do you believe that everyone has this kind of experience, but they're just not aware of them?
That I think many people have had the experience. I don't think everyone has had it. I've talked, there are unfortunately so many people that buy into what science says, which is based on the 19th century mechanicalistic idea that the only thing that exists is matter. And if the only thing that exists is matter, then the brain creates consciousness, and when the brain dies, the consciousness dies. But that's not so. And in fact, in my books, I go into great detail on research that's been done that shows that's not the truth. The University of Virginia, for example, has been studying this question for about 60 years, and they have come to the conclusion that the brain does not create consciousness. The brain is a receiver of consciousness, sort of like a cell phone or a radio is a receiver of something that originated elsewhere. And your consciousness is not created by your brain. Your brain captures your consciousness and integrates it with your body. So that's a long answer to your question, but I don't think that people who believe that just uh, material substance matter exists are likely to have that kind of experience. Maybe they would if they go through a crisis or something, but a lot of people don't. It's too bad.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I mean, I'm just wondering why this happens when we think about the purpose of life, the experience in the human body is to learn certain lessons and evolve. So I'm just wondering why some of us don't get that mission accomplished.
Well, it's because they haven't really, they don't believe it. They've been taught since they were children in school. If you believe what your science teacher told you, you're going to think that's impossible. And so it won't even occur to you to think that you might be here for a reason. But the fact of the matter is, if you stop and think, and that's what this book that we're going to talk about a little bit more, Your Path to Bliss, is about. It's about taking the time and stopping and thinking, taking a time out from life. Maybe take 8 hours the first time you do it, and really dig into your own subconscious mind and figure out what it is that you have to contribute, what talents and gifts you might have that you can use to serve others, to make this world a better place to live. And that may get you to why you came here. Of course, there are other reasons you could come here besides that. You could just come here because you wanted to learn a particular lesson, or maybe you might have come here with some other kind of mission. But I think most of us come here to use the unique talents that we have probably developed over many lifetimes in service to others. And once we do that, we will find ourselves having a very fulfilling life. And that's why I say it's your path to bliss. It's finding that purpose and pursuing it.
Oh, wow. You're right. We're going to be talking about beliefs a lot. I love that topic. And I think that the reason why I chose one of your books, you sent me 3 of them, it's because it seems like this is a great time, isn't it, Stephen, to examine disconnected, dysfunctional beliefs.
Yeah, especially now, while we're recording this, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of people are cooped up in their homes, and who knows how long that will last. But while they're there, this is something they could do. They could take that time out easily to really think and meditate and figure out what their purpose is and how they might put that purpose to work to serve others. And then when the pandemic's over and we can get out and back into a normal life, they can then pursue it. Maybe start a business or go to take a particular kind of job where we can use that talent that they've figured out that will lead them to a life of bliss.
Right. So continue with my warm-up questions. The follow-up question for the first one, what is life, is what do you think is the opposite of life?
Well, I'm not sure there is an opposite. I mean, everything is alive, and certainly in the physical world. It may not be all good, but even a piece of steel, if you were able to look really deeply into that piece of steel, you would see that it is alive with electrons and quarks and all those little pieces of energy that are flying around. It's not really a solid substance. There's no such thing as solid substance. It's all energy, and it's all moving rapidly. We just don't see it. So I think it's really all alive.
Yeah, and I agree. What is the meaning of freedom to you?
The ultimate freedom for me is to be able to spend each day in your own way, doing what you like to do, what you want to do. And to me, that is freedom. It's freedom from worry about money. It's freedom from worry about ill health. It's freedom to do as you please. And that's why I say you need to follow your bliss. You need to figure out what it is you can do each day that you love to do, and then you will indeed achieve that.
Yeah, I love that, what you just said. What is the world's greatest need at this time?
I think the greatest need is a return to the belief that what I call providence, the fact that there is this one mind that is pushing toward growth and evolution and has wants things to work out the best way for us to evolve and become who we came to Earth to become. I think a return to that belief, and I don't mean that you have to become a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist. I think you can do that with just realizing that it is what it is, that providence, that one mind does exist, and it's pushing toward growth and harmony.
Yeah, yes. And you speak of harmony in your book, in this book, and I have some questions for you about that. What is love to you? What is your definition of love?
Ooh, love. Love is action, really. It can be an emotion. Obviously, romantic love is an emotion, but I think the Christian Bible has about 4 different words for love. Each one of them means something a little bit different. And to me, love is the action of doing to others as you would have others do unto you. That's the rule, of course. And to me, that's what love is. It's doing to others what you would have those others do for you or to you. I would say if I have to pin it down to one thing, that's what I would pin it down to.
I know you talk about unconditional love in your book too, so I have some questions about that later. What, where, and who is God to you?
Well, what would be the infinite mind that undergirds, supports, and informs reality, that creates reality. Where is everywhere at once. And what was the third part of that?
What, where, and who?
Who?
Yeah.
I really have a kind of pantheistic view of God, which is that God is in every living thing. It is even in things that aren't what we consider alive, like I said, that piece of steel. So God is transcendent. God permeates reality. God underlies reality. It's everywhere at once.
I guess a question that comes to mind is, why do you think so many of us choose to believe that there is a God that is personal, that takes care of one person more than others, or a God that judges, that punishes, that's sitting out there and looking upon us?
Well, I think it's because they are egocentric. They have created that God in their own mind that is like them, anthropomorphic God, that is an extension of themselves. And if they truly believe that, that's the experience they will have. If they believe that there's a God that judges, that picks winners and losers, then their life is going to be like that. They're going to be things are going to happen to them. They're going to reinforce that because it's what's in their subconscious mind, and their subconscious mind is connected to the infinite mind, but the infinite mind, the transcendent mind, God that I talked about just a minute ago, is subjective. It doesn't make judgments. It plays back to us what we put into it in the form of thoughts and beliefs. So if we put into the subjective mind the belief that we are going to be judged or punished for something we do, then we indeed will be, because that's, it's just playing back to us what we put into it.
Oh, yeah. And that goes back to the karma idea. Yeah, you talk in your book.
Yeah, karma is another thing that's real. Now, It's not exactly the same thing. I think that karma is, well, let me say this. There are laws of physics. That's the physical universe. One of the laws is that for every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction. That comes from Newton. There are laws of metaphysics, which is the unseen world, the spirit world. And the same thing happens. What you give out is what you get back. If you want to be loved, you need to love. If you want to be want respect, you need to respect others. It's just a basic law of the universe, a law of metaphysics, that if you're ugly and mean to people, people are going to be ugly and mean to you. I was thinking today, last night, I watched a documentary about World War II and the terrible atrocities that the German Nazis, what they did back then. And when they started out, they really thought they were invincible and they had great victories. But what they gave out came back to them in spades. I mean, their cities were destroyed. Millions of their people were killed. I mean, they got back what they gave out. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way the universe works.
Is it connected to the law of attraction?
Well, the law of attraction is real, but it's because of what's in your mind. What you hold in your mind, what you believe is going to happen, and we've already been talking about this in terms of, when you think you're going to be judged by God or punished, you will be, because that's what you got in your mind. Well, what you've got in your mind is if you hold it long enough and believe it strongly enough and even feel it, and feelings are a very important part of that, it's going to happen. Whether it's good or bad, whatever's in your mind is going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, it works. But that reason people need to know that is because if you don't have good thoughts in your mind, if you think you're going to be sick, if you think that something awful is going to happen, it probably will. So, I mean, you need to change your thoughts. Change your thoughts and you'll change your reality.
Yeah, so true. So my last warm-up question is, what do you think is the main purpose of your life?
My life? Well, I think I've already touched on that. That is, I feel like my purpose is to write these books. I've written about 20 or so, maybe more. I know people should go to my website, shmartin.com. That's S as in Sam, H as in Henry, and Martin, MARTIN.com. And you can look at the books that I've written and even click on them and go to Amazon and buy them. But my purpose is to really, what I would feel I've achieved it if I convince enough people that the materialist idea that matter is all there is false, and that we're each eternal beings here on Earth having a physical experience. If I can convince enough people of that, so that it begins to, at least to change the predominant ideas nowadays that science has convinced a lot of people of, then I will have accomplished my mission. And my mission is to get science to realize that they're off base, that they're hanging on to an idea that's from the 19th century that doesn't hold water anymore. And they can read some of my books and they'll see that it's true, because it's not me saying it. It's people who've done an awful lot of research. I mentioned the University of Virginia has been at it for 60 years, since 1960. Is when they started. And that same unit of the University of Virginia Medical School is still doing the same research. It's called the Division of Perceptual Studies. Look it up online. Google the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and you'll see what they're up to.
Wonderful. Yeah. So let's talk about your book. What was the inspiration, intention, and the process of writing Your Path to Bliss?
Well, the inspiration for it, and the title is There was a gentleman, a college professor named Joseph Campbell. He lived from 1904 to I think he died in 1987, who wrote a number of books. He was a professor of comparative religion at Sarah Lawrence, then college. I think it's now a university in upstate New York somewhere. And he wrote a book called Hero with a Thousand Faces. And that book called attention to the idea that myths throughout the ages and in all cultures have a similar storyline, in that the hero of the story is yanked out of his ordinary world and tossed into a situation where he has to use his wits and his strength to survive and so forth. But the line that he was the subject of a TV series on PBS television, public television, back in the 1980s, called The Power of Myth, because he knew all these myths. He'd studied them, and he'd studied comparative religions, and he saw that there was this underlying story running throughout them. And his advice, both on that TV show, but to his students at Sarah Lawrence, was to follow your bliss, to find out what it is that you love, and to pursue that. And if you do, things will fall together and come together for you, so that you are able to not only to survive, but to have a life that is blissful, in the sense that you're doing what you want to do, what you're good at, what you like to do. And so the title of the book, Your Path to Bliss, How to Find and Pursue Your Purpose, really comes from that. And the idea that what I try to do in the book is give you a way of going into your own mind to find out what that is that you should be doing in order to find your bliss and follow it.
Right. Yeah. So follow your bliss, which is connected to being in tune, being connected with that which gives us the sense of being alive. For some of us, we have more than one bliss or one thing that makes us to feel that way. So how do we choose one?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I'm not sure I know if you have, it's likely that your different things that you love are somehow connected, I would say, and that would be a way to tie them all together. But I don't know. What do you have? I know that this is you're the one asking the question, but do you have several things that you would like to do, that you would be happy doing any one of them?
Yes, I actually had many years ago, when I began to live the journey of knowing what my purpose was and all that. And I found out that I had more than one. But for me, what was interesting in the process of choosing was asking the question, what serves me? What is life asking me to do at this moment? What can I do now? What bliss would serve my journey at this moment in my life? And that's how I decided to write. That was the first one.
Yeah, I guess, you're right that different times in your life may, what you ought to be doing at that particular time indeed could change. I mean, it's true of myself. I'm an old man now, but I've done a number of different things. For many, many years, I was in the advertising business, and I wrote ads and did TV commercials and all that sort of thing, and I enjoyed it. But after a while, I felt like I was just repeating myself, and I needed to do something different. And I was always interested in this idea of the spiritual side of things, the one life. I was raised in a family of, I guess you would call them secular humanists who bought into the materialist idea. They were nice people and all that, but I had an experience when I was in my 20s that kind of made me question all that, and I began to pursue and try to learn what I could, and I guess came around to where I am now, and it became time for me to leave that advertising business and write books about that, and that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years or so.
Right. So that was my next question about your own hero's journey.
Yeah, good question. As I said, I was brought up in a family where, we might go to church once or twice a year, but they were basically secularists, didn't really put much stock in that. And so I didn't, I thought that's the way things were. And, but I grew up, went to college, and my father and older brother had been in the advertising business. So that seemed like an interesting thing. And it was sort of like what you did, and, you followed. And so I started doing that, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time. But once, I guess I was about 27 years old, I was very sick with the flu. And long story short, I had an out-of-body experience where I was looking at myself. I was up on the ceiling looking down at my body on the bed. And that didn't last very long. It wasn't one of these near-death experiences where you go and have a life review and all that sort of thing. It was, it probably lasted 30 seconds or something like that. But it was enough for me to think, my gosh, well, if my consciousness is created by my brain, how can I be up at the ceiling looking down at my body and my head is, brain's inside my head there. Mm-hmm. So that kind of started me thinking, and I started reading everything I could about metaphysics, and I joined the Rosicrucian Society, which is a society of mystics, people who study metaphysics. And I went through their whole course and went from novice to adept, and which is the different levels. And then I think it probably a few years later, in my 30s, I read Life. I think it's Life After Life by Raymond Moody, which was about near-death experiences, and that really got me into it. But again, to make the long story short, I stayed in the advertising business until I went into business with my brother. We built up an ad agency and sold it, and then I started another one and sold and worked in that one and built it up and sold it. And that's when I decided I was going to stop and really do what I had been wanting to do for a while by then, which was to write books about what I'd learned about metaphysics. And that's what I've been doing for the past 20 years or so, which brings me up to today.
That's wonderful. Did that change, Stephen, that passion for writing throughout these years?
I went from writing ads for banks and insurance companies to writing books about metaphysics. So, the writing changed, but I was, always enjoyed writing. Just a different topic, I guess.
Right. So let's talk about the 6 steps that anyone can follow to find out what their purpose is or to return to the right path. But before that, because we will be talking a lot about beliefs, I need to clarify something. What is the difference between beliefs, values, inner knowing, and wisdom, per se?
Well, beliefs are something I guess you don't have to have proof about, but you have to have a feeling about that they're true. I mean, I'm an introvert, but I'm also an intuitive. If you know the Myers-Briggs personality scale, well, I've forgotten what it's called, but I'm an INTJ, introvert, intuitive, thinking, and judging. And so my personality type sees a pattern of how things are kind of connected together and uses intuition and thinking to see how they all fit together. And that's how I form my beliefs. The second thing you said was what, value or faith?
Yeah, values and inner knowing, and then wisdom.
Well, inner knowing and beliefs are the same thing to me. I mean, that's what I just described. I have this, I can see how it all fits together. And so it's obvious to me that that is the way it is. And that becomes a belief. Values are more an ethical thing, which has to do with, whether you get back to karma. You can either have good karma by doing the right thing because you know that you're going to get back what you give out, or you can do the right thing because you feel that that's the right thing to do. And to me, that's more what a value is, because you feel that it's right. You intuitively know that it's better to be nice to people than it is to be mean.
True.
And then what was the last thing? It was
wisdom.
Wisdom. Oh, well, wisdom is something that comes, I think, with age. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. You can know an awful lot and really be pretty unwise. And so I think typically as we experience and we see how things work and we learn more, we become more wise. Most of us do. Some people go through their entire life and are really pretty stupid, even though they may be very brilliant in terms of worldly knowledge.
Yeah, that's a great answer, though, because I was wondering if inner knowing or knowing was very different from beliefs, because it's based on that inner personal experience. So you might not be able to explain, but you know it. And beliefs is just, you don't know, you don't have the experience, but you believe in this idea, this concept.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although there are a lot of things that people believe that I don't believe because it doesn't resonate with my inner knowing. See what I mean? But again, I'm a highly intuitive type person. So if it doesn't resonate with me, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah, right. And when you say intuition, is that connected to the soul, the spirit, that you are in connection or you're in contact with that voice?
Oh yeah. It's definitely getting in contact. There's a what is it? The still small voice within. That I guess in the Christians would say that's God. Well, I would say it's your connection to God. I think that that universal mind. The universal mind knows everything, and we're all connected to that. We all evolved from that, and we're still connected to it, and we're connected to it through our subconscious mind. So intuition is that connection into the reality that underlies everything, that knows everything.
Yeah, and I agree. So let's talk about those 6 steps. But before that, again, I have another question. You mentioned that we are responsible for everything that happens to us, everything. And you really mean that, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, somebody would say, well, I didn't cause the coronavirus that has got me quarantined. And I would have to say they're probably right about that. But I think as far as where you are in life after, however old let's say you're 30 years old, where you are at 30 years old is a result of your own choices that you've made and what's in your subconscious mind. It's led you there. obviously there are some things like you could step off a curb and a bus can hit you. You may have done that subconsciously because you didn't want to continue. But the coronavirus, I think that was caused by some over in Russia and China, some laboratory that got loose, who wasn't something that you were responsible for.
Yeah. So speaking of that, because you mentioned, I usually don't talk about this topic, but how serious is this current situation?
I think it's terribly serious. I think that the fact that all these businesses have been shut down for a period of time, even if it's going to be very hard to come back from this. I think that we're going to have another Great Depression. And I'm finishing writing a book right now that uses both my business knowledge from having been a serial entrepreneur for a number of years and my spiritual knowledge, my metaphysical knowledge, and putting them together. And I'm calling it a new zeitgeist, which is it's a new spirit of prosperity and can-do attitude that we need to adopt in order to be able to recover from this situation that we're going through. I think it's a whole lot worse than going to be a whole lot worse than most people think. I mean, you just can't shut down businesses. And today is April 17th. I read in the paper this morning that 22 million people have filed for unemployment already. And that's the first 4 weeks of this. We went from 3.5% unemployment to 13% now, and it's going to get worse. So it's very, very bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Staying with that, how are you preparing and how do you think we can prepare for let's say, the worst?
Well, I think that we will come out of it. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be terribly damaged financially, and it's going to be a bad scene. But I think what we can do individually, if we are out of work, for example, is to figure out what your purpose is, and either start a business or when things get better, land a job where you can put that to work. I would, if it were me, I'd be using my time to plan what I'm going to do when things start to improve and figure out how I could do that. And that's what this book that I'm writing now, the new Zeitgeist, is about. And if you want to, people should go to my website because probably by the time this podcast is available, I'll have finished it. It'll be published and it'll certainly be on my website, which is shmartin.com.
Wonderful. It makes sense to me what you just said. So we need to find a new way of living. And that requires a new way of thinking, which can be a much better way than we have been living. And I love your input, this idea that we can go within and find out the thing that has been there forever for our entire lives, but we have ignored.
Absolutely. I think that each one of us, before we decided to incarnate this time around, had a plan. Problem is, we may have forgotten it. And we probably forgot it because, we were taught in school that the thing to do is to get an education, get a job, and go out and make a lot of money. And going out and make a lot of money isn't necessarily going to make you happy. What will make you happy is putting your talents and what you love to do to work. And if you can make enough money to live doing that, then in my mind, you're successful. And that's what we ought to be doing instead of just trying to make a lot of money.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I have to thank you here. I usually thank my guests at the end, but thank you for what you're doing because that resonates a lot with my heart, which you might call intuition. So the first step, you say, take at least one full day to think deeply. That's interesting because now we can take days, right, to do that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And ask yourself questions like, who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? Think about this. If you had 1 month to live, what would you do with that month? And also think about if you were on your deathbed, say you're 95 or 101 or whatever, and you look back at your life, what would you regret not having done? Those kinds of questions, and I put them in the book, are the kinds of questions you might ask yourself. But probably the biggest and most important one is what have you done in your life? Maybe when you were a child that you got so wrapped up in doing that time passed and you didn't realize how quickly, hour went by and you thought it was only a minute. Those are the kind of things that can give you clues to what it is you really want to do deep down inside. And I think each one of us has something special about us that we can probably do better than anyone else. And there's some way to use that to serve others. And if you do, you'll be on your path to bliss.
Yeah, I love that. I love the questions that you pose. They're deep questions. I also like that you mentioned eliminating unconscious programming. You also talk about identifying the obstacles. That's very important too. So step 2, talk to me about step 2, seek harmony in all that you do.
Well, this goes to the idea of karma and the fact that the life force, the one mind that we've been talking about already, pushes toward growth and harmony. It's evolution and harmony. When somebody's sick, when someone has disease, and you could say that disease, they're out of harmony. And so what life really wants is for things to be in harmony. And so you need to go with that flow and try to, treat people the way you would like to be treated, and to compliment people when they do a good job, to do the things that are going to create harmony around you. And that's going to be good for you because people are going to like you. They're going to want to help you succeed in whatever it is you're doing. If you're nice to people, people are going to be nice to you back. So that's why I say create harmony in all that you do.
Yeah, and I agree. How do you think, or how do we identify, how do we know when we are not in harmony with life?
Well, things just aren't working for us. We're anxious. We're have insomnia. We can't sleep at night. Where things aren't going right, and it's probably because we're not on the right path. You mentioned that the obstacles. If you see an obstacle, you got to figure out a way around it or over it or under it. But if you're on the wrong path and you're headed in the wrong direction, you're not following your bliss. You're not going to be in harmony. You're going to be anxious about things. You're going to be worried about things. You're going to be, am I going to get fired? Or am I going to get a disease? I mean, these are the kind of things that are disharmony, or the opposite of harmony, whatever, disharmony.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And also makes me think about like the situation now. This harmony doesn't really have anything to do with the outside, because if this is happening, but you still can go through it, the challenges, with this state of mind that is peaceful, that holds positivity, then that's the harmony within, I would say. Like now, things are not going right for a lot of people. But it's the way we face the challenge that really shows the harmony within exists.
Yes, I think for a lot of people, it's right now, though, it's going to be very hard to. Things aren't in harmony not because they've created disharmony, but because of the outside situations, the fact that they have lost their job and through no fault of their own. But they need to know that the one mind that we've been talking about, God, if you want to call it that, works things so that they come out for the good. And the old saying of there's silver lining behind every cloud or something like that. It's true. I think it was the Apostle Paul who said that in all things work for the good of those who love the Lord, or something like that. It's true that when terrible things can happen, tragedies happen, but something good always comes out of it. And something good is going to come out of this coronavirus situation. It's going to be a terrible time to go through, but at the end, perhaps we will all be more spiritual. Perhaps more of us will be following our path to bliss, because it'll give us the time to think, and it'll give us, realize that their life is more important than just making money and things like that.
Right. You also mentioned within step 2 that most of us learn fastest through pain. So I'm wondering why it's so challenging for us to learn from the mistakes of others.
Yeah, that's a good question, but I think it's that what I said is true, that when you touch a hot stove, and when you do that, you're not going to do it again. And so pain is a teacher that really teaches us the lesson, if you will. And so once we make a mistake, if we keep making it, then we haven't learned. And there are people that do that, but it's because of something that's in their subconscious mind that keeps bringing them back to that. And that's part of what karma is. Karma is a memory. There are people, men and women, who attract a mate that is not right for them. And it's because perhaps they have a low opinion of themselves. They need to learn from their mistakes and not do that again. Those are people that go through the pain and don't learn. But most people, if they're smart, once they've done something that comes back to bite them, they won't do it again.
Yeah, yes, so true. On step 3, you talk about expressing unconditional love and forgiveness. The title is Be Generous and Follow the Golden Rule.
Yeah, well, this goes along with the harmony or karma. What you give out comes back to you. So if you are generous and you give, people are going to give back. I think that's one of the things that a lot of wealthy people realize. Somebody like Bill Gates, who's probably the richest man in the world, has created a foundation where he gives away billions of dollars, and yet it all comes back to him. It's I think that in the church, again, I don't think you have to be a Christian, but one of the things that the church has taught for millennia, and it's in the Bible, is to give 10% of what you earn. The first fruits, it's called in the Bible. The first 10% is you should be given away, and that's really a practical thing, because by giving it away, it's going to come back to you. It's part of the law of the universe, the old karma thing of what goes around comes around. What you give out comes back to you. And it often comes back to you in a much bigger way than what you gave out. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's so true, too. Speaking of unconditional love, I know you went back to the law of karma, which is connected to it. Do you think that this is an understanding, like a knowing that can become a knowing, or it's a practice for life?
I think it's that eventually, if you do it, it'll become something that's a knowing, that is an intuitive reality. The fact of the matter is, and Jesus knew this so well, is that we are all one. And we've talked about that earlier in this program, that we are all connected. We're all part of the one life. We just have different points of view because of our memories and because of our bodies. But we are all one. And so what we do to another, we're doing to ourselves. If that may not make sense to a lot of people, but I think it is true at a deep level. And so, for practical reasons, we should love others unconditionally. But I think once we do for a while, we'll realize that it really makes sense at a spiritual or an intuitive level.
Yeah. I like what you just said. It will make sense, to that voice within. It's no longer a belief, right? So in step 2, you talk about something interesting, very interesting to me, about projections, that which we see in others, it's because it's in us. And the title is Be Truthful to Yourself and Others.
Well, I think it's that even today's psychologists will agree that what makes you angry that other people's traits are or things that they do, it's because it's something about yourself that you don't like. I mean, it's just a psychological thing that is, I think, a matter of fact that, if somebody does something that's quirky or maybe it's not very nice, if you don't have that in you too that you'd like to get rid of, you're just not even going to notice it. But if you notice it, it's because, and it bothers you, look at yourself, because you are probably guilty of exactly the same thing, and that's why you react to it. You see what I mean?
Mm. Yes, I understand. This is a complex concept idea, because we can think of things like actions of certain human beings who they are not in this lifetime. They cannot understand certain things, like psychopaths, let's say, people with mental disorders, and they do things that disturbs us in a deeper level. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's a projection.
In that case, a psychopath, somebody, a pedophile, that is an injustice, and it's that's not because you would do the same thing. It's because you are upset by what has been done to the child, and I know that's not the same thing. That's a matter of what's right and what's wrong, of values. I think we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think I agree, because anger has a lot to do with values. If you get angry about something, that the strong emotion has something to do with going against what you believe in, what your values are, right? So step 5, always have and pursue a challenge. Talk to me about that one, Stephen.
Yeah, I do think that we all need to have something we're striving for, that we feel is important, that we're trying to accomplish. And when we don't, we become lost. And, there are many, many, many stories of people who work for 40 years and make enough money that they can retire comfortably. And then when they retire, they don't have anything to do, and they end up dying 6 months later. They need to have a challenge. They need to have something that they want to do, that even if it's improve their golf game, they need to have to keep them going. And that's why I say that.
So challenges are definitely part of life.
You gotta have. If you don't have a challenge anymore, you might as well go back where you came from, which is the spirit realm. And then maybe you'll think up another challenge and come back and try to accomplish that in another life. But if you got a challenge going and you're trying to accomplish it, you're probably going to keep on trucking. As one friend of mine said, you got to keep pedaling the bicycle.
That's cute, and that's true. And it's very different from problems. I love the way you say challenge, because seeing problems as challenges, opportunities to become better. I love that.
That's definitely true. Usually behind every problem you face, there is an opportunity if you look closely. It's either an opportunity to learn or an opportunity to do something differently that'll make things turn out better as a result.
Yeah. This idea of being open enough to see the possibilities and the choices so we don't get stuck. And step 6, answer the call, finally follow your bliss.
Yeah. Well, answering the call that really comes from, we talked about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And part of the hero's journey is the hero is called. Sometimes he doesn't realize, or she doesn't realize that she's called. And sometimes she's thrust into the adventure, whether she likes it or not. But it is being called, because that is something that you need to do in order to grow, evolve, become the person that you are able to become, is to pursue that adventure and to go through the difficulties and the trials and to fight the dragon and to, or in the case of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, to get the broom and bring it back to the wizard. You've got to do that in order to become who you can become. And so in order for that to happen, you have to first answer the call. And the call is to leave what you're doing and begin doing and begin following your path to bliss, putting your unique capabilities, your unique talents to work in the service of others. And that's what I mean by answering the call.
Right. I love the way you say that seeing life as an adventure. That is so wonderful. I'm wondering if we can also see death as an adventure, the physical death.
I think so. I think so. I think that when you're going to be going to a new place, maybe actually it's an old place you've been before, you're going to be returning. I think that you should not fear death, that you should be happy that you're going to be rejoining probably a group of souls that you've been with for many, many millennia, that you're evolving together, your soul group. I think of it as your soul group, where they are with you now, as maybe as some of them as what we might think of as guardian angels or guides, and some of them as friends or relatives or children that you have, or your spouse or your brother or your sister. Some of those people are part of your soul group, and all of your soul group, whether they're incarnate or not, exist on the non-physical plane. And when you return to it, you will be back in that group. And so you'll be around people that you love and that you can identify with and you can share stories with. And so it will be an adventure.
Yeah, that's another thought that's so wonderful. I just try most of the time to stay here in this adventure one at a time. So I'm not thinking too much about what will happen. But yeah, I love the idea that at that moment, that when we are losing the body or transition, that we are aware enough to know that this is an adventure. So we can live in peace and also transition in peace.
Correct. I think that the fear of death is something that causes a lot of difficulty for a lot of people. And that's too bad, because I don't think it is something to fear. I don't fear it any longer. I certainly did until I learned what I've learned about it. But fear of death is one of the 6, and probably the most, the biggest fear. There's 6 basic fears that can hold us back, and that's a big one. Fear of death, fear of jealousy, fear of loss of love, fear of poverty, the fear of ill health, and I forgot. I don't know if that's 6, but those are.
Yeah, I wish I knew them. But that makes sense what you said, being the first ones, that the fear of the first one might be losing the people we love and then losing our own bodies, right?
Yeah, fear of old age. That's they're the 6 basic fears, which I'm putting in this new book that I'm writing right now, and how to overcome at least the fear of poverty, because that
Yeah.
that can hold you back in a way that keeps you from following your bliss.
Right. And I also love at the end of your book, you suggest some methods that can create more bliss in our lives. And you have many of them. Taking time for yourself, at least 5 minutes. And you talk about spending time in nature. I love that. Exercise, meditation, and much more. Would you like to add anything or read a passage in your book before I ask you my final questions, Steve?
No, just to, again, encourage people to visit my website, shmartin.com, and hopefully, if they have any comments, anything they want to tell me or any suggestions they want to make, there's a contact form on my website that I'll get an email if they fill it out and click send, and I'll answer them.
Sounds great. So my final questions. What was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself in this lifetime?
I've had several businesses. I've started several businesses. I've been successful, but I really don't like managing people. I don't like, them coming to me and saying, I really need a corner office with a wooden trash can.
That's great.
So, admitting to myself that I really don't like what I'm doing in that regard was a big revelation and kind of hard for me to take, but I've accepted it now.
And that's also part of that, this creating peace, inner peace in this lifetime, in this adventure, acceptance, isn't it? Letting go, surrender.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, it's the Al-Anon prayer where you accept the things you can't change and you change the things you can change. I've forgotten exactly how it's worded, but that's basically the message. If there's certain things you can do nothing about, you might as well accept it and let it go. And then there are things you can do something about, and that you ought to address and do something about.
Right. I love that. And by accepting the things we cannot change, that creates more flow of energy, of positive in space, right? For the creation of new things, a new life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is another word for healing?
I think healing comes back to harmony, things coming together the way they are meant to be in harmony. And so, when you have an open wound and it heals, the life force brings those two parts of you together and mends them together, and that's creating harmony. And we would also say that's healing.
Yeah, I love that. You actually asked this question earlier in our conversation today. If you knew you would die soon, meaning losing the body, would you make any change in your life or do anything differently?
I can say honestly, no. I'm doing what I love, and hope I can keep doing it for a while longer.
Yeah, what a great answer. Every time I hear it. What are 3 things about life you know for sure as of today?
3 things about life are that consciousness is life and life is consciousness. And we're here for a purpose. That's 3 things. But that I'll say we're all part of the one life, that all is one. There is one life and we're all part of it. We're just different aspects of it.
Right. It has been a peaceful conversation. Thank you for your presence, your wisdom. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
And my last question, where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
You can find them at my website, shmartin.com, S as in Sam, H as in Henry, Martin, MARTIN.com. And you'll see a tab that has my books. You can click on that. You'll see that most of my books there. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can click on the Contact Steve tab and do that. So come to my website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Stephen Hawley Martin, please visit his website, shmartin.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.